All right, so on to the analysis, give you a bit of an overview. I prepared this document for City Council about a month and a half ago, and I figured I'd leverage some of the observations. Basically what it is a historical analysis of the crime in the City of Yakima. All right, so we'll go over a few of the ideas and then we'll open it up for any kind of questioning that you might have. All right. This is the total Part 1 rate per 1,000 individuals, okay, from 1985 to 2014. We reached our peak in 1988 with 175.3, and just this past year, we're at 53.8 per 1,000. So I mean, it's a significant decline, a 69.3% decrease in that almost 30-year span, okay? What's even more significant is if you think about the population. As remember we talked about before, this is over per 1,000. We've had a significant growth in population as well. All right, census estimates around our peak put us around 49 to 50,000 individuals within the city, right? And again, as I quoted before, we're around 93, 94,000 according to the 13 estimate, okay? That's approximately a 91% increase in population, right? Yet you still see these declines. Usually you would see it in some of the other ways. Now, all cities have generally had this type of an effect. It's pretty pronounced here and some other locations around the country as well. Okay. What's also interesting is although a 91% increase in population, we've had a 41% decrease in just raw counts. And that's not even talking about rates, it's just raw counts. Okay. This is just depicting a 3-year span, right? And just putting it into showing us that we're 21% down just in the past 3 years from 2012. Okay, and then Seattle is actually up 25% over that same 3-year span on Part 1s. Okay. And again, this is that same 30-year span, but now just dealing with just 4 randomly picked jurisdictions around Yakima, Seattle, Kennewick, and Spokane. Now, as you can see, over this 30-year span, and this would mimic what's happening nationally too, you see that downward trend over that. Because the heyday of the late 80s, early 90s, lots and lots of crime. I mean, New York City made a major turnaround, if anybody remembered reading some of the reports there, and they were really proud of that. You see this major decline from, obviously we have that 69%, Seattle 52, Kennewick 64. Spokane has actually had a recent uptrend since 2007, 2008, 2009, where they're actually about 1.4% over their peak. All right, so they're on the uptrend. So it'd actually be interesting. That's their 13 statistics. I don't have access, and they haven't reported their 14 stuff yet. A lot of times that information will be available unless they report it in the news or whatever it might be, until it comes out in the federal report probably later this year. So it'd be interesting to see if that's still going that way, and we can go forward from there. But what's interesting here is not necessarily just the decline, because we're seeing declines across the board. It's the gap between some of the other agencies and some of the other jurisdictions that we're seeing. We're significantly reducing the gap, and then sometimes, in essence, eliminating the gap that we had, in comparison to some of those other jurisdictions. This is just another viewpoint, 3-year span, but month by month, right? January through December over the 2012 to 2014, right? Again, Part 1s. You can see our raw counts went from 6415 in 2012 down to just over 5,000 for this past year.
A quick question, the trend for the city of Yakima, do you know if the county looks similar or not?
I briefly looked at their stuff. I can't substantively say if they've gone up or gone down, but I can easily answer that question for you, get your information and look at it. I'd have to see how, I have access to YSO's data, but I'm not allowed to pull and report on their statistics for them. Does that make sense? Right? So. These are the raw numbers: robbery, arson, ag assault, burglary, homicide, larceny, motor vehicle theft, and forcible rape. And you can see the percent change from 13 to 14, and then from 12 to 14. Okay. I have a few copies of this document. I'd be happy to pass it out and have you guys go.
It is available on the chamber website as well.
It's available on the chamber website. You guys can download it. I think it's available on the PDF. Go ahead.
Do you have an explanation for why the big decrease?
In specifically Yakima or in
Yakima.
Yakima? Well, you know, the specific, you know, methods and the partnerships with communities. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about it afterwards. But you know, it's a variety of things. When you look at declines in crime rates, to attribute it to a single entity or a single event or even multiple events, it would be a...
Well, is the police department doing something different? I mean, that's a huge drop in
Sure.
that time. I mean, there's got to be something.
Well, you got to think about it. The trend from 1988 till now has been going down in general from, you know, around the nation, in Washington State. We're just doing it more so. So, I mean, increased efforts, proactive efforts from the police department, partnerships with communities, outreach, CSOs, school resource officers, a variety of things in which we can touch on a little bit. This is just a bit more of a breakout of the individuals. 22% reduction in robbery over just this past year, from 149 down to 115. Aggravated assault, again, that's not all simple assaults. Simple assaults can be a variety. I mean, if I push him, we could actually possibly get a simple assault. These are aggravated assaults, right? Homicide, forcible rape, no change. Arson's up, and then larceny is down 4.2%. You can kind of see that on a month-to-month basis. Now, again, I know it's a lot to look at in a very brief format, but again, the document is available on the website. I'd be happy to provide it to you. Right? I'd be happy to answer any questions that are associated with it. So what does all that mean? What's next, moving forward? The City of Yakima has actually seen quite a drastic decrease, right? So what is making that happen? It's important for us to identify what is actually making that happen so that we can capitalize on these successes and move forward into 2015 and 2016, right? And then beyond, all right? What does that really mean? What is capitalizing on recent success, proactive initiatives? It sounds like a news headline, right? It sounds like something somebody would throw at you and say, well, that sounds really complicated, and I'm not going to ask what it really means, okay? I want to express a little bit. I was brought on as the crime intelligence analyst in September, okay? So the way I look at this problem is to be more proactive. Well, what does proactive mean, okay? And this is just basically leveraging information. Okay, we live in a data-enriched, big data environment. Right? There's so much data being collected these days, not just by police departments, but just in general. Through social networks, through businesses, through our ability to retrieve the information through our record management systems these days. Before, gone are the days of paper and pencil put into a filing cabinet. Here are the days of being able to query based off of keywords, key searches, pattern searches, you name it. Okay? It just takes the ability for us to be able to leverage that information and use it in a timely manner. Because all intelligence is information, but not all information is intelligence. We need to take that information, make sense of it, get to the people who can use it, utilize it in a timely manner. Because again, old intelligence, anybody who was in the military, right? When you get intelligence, right, it doesn't matter that 2 days after the attack we can get a report that says the attack is imminent, right? Who cares, right? Hindsight's 20/20. Yeah, good job. What we need is in a timely way to get it to you, get it to our officers, right, and get it to our command staff, whatever it might be, so they can make better decisions. The buzzword term these days is intelligence-led policing, and again, it's another buzzword term. What does that really mean? Okay. It means taking information, utilizing it, right, and making effective decisions based off that. There's not a single situation that I would like to walk into with less information rather than more information, right? The more information I have on the people, on the places, on the events, okay, on correlations between variables, I'd like to be in the know. It's going to make me more comfortable. It's going to make officers more comfortable out in the field. It's going to make more confidence behind the decisions we make, more apt to make those decisions. Okay, in a timely manner, stepping up, doing those things, going out on a limb, suggesting new innovations, new tactics, new techniques, whatever it might be. With that intelligence, we can be proactive, right, and stay ahead of the curve because, again, you got the dog chasing your tail, right? Well, governments throughout the country, FEMA, whatever you want to name, they're basically living in the paradigm of 20 years ago, right? We're doing things like we did in the previous war, or we're doing things like we did in the previous conflict, okay? What we don't want to do is look back to what we need to do forward. We want to look forward to what we do now, if that makes sense. And that's essentially what proactivity means to me anyway. And what does that, again, what does that mean? Let's take it another step further. We take that information, we provide timely intelligence, we can forecast. Gone are the days of, I mean, this was intelligence at one point. I mean, we don't want to do, forgive me, we have high and low months, right? High, low, we see it, right? Well, we don't want to look back at 2014 and say, well, in December, we had an increase of 22% of this particular crime or Part 1 offenses. Let's get proactive. Let's send 5 new officers out to that area. Because we can break down by district too, or location, or whatever else it might be, right? The common knee-jerk response to say, well, let's throw more of this at it. That's not necessarily what, we need to understand the problem more, right? The common who, what, where, when, why, how, right? Because now I can identify that there might be a problem, but now that opens me up to ask the question, the qualitative question of why. It is happening. Here's a factual response. Here's a descriptive response. But why is it happening? When we can start to look at where it's happening in a temporal, in a spatial manner, we can start to see, okay, this is a hot spot. And hot spots are a bit of a pet peeve of mine anyway, right? You know, most people say, well, that's a hot spot. Well, it's always going to be a hot spot, right? North First Street, ours right here. It's going to be a hot spot, right? Well, what really is going on there? What types of crimes are going on, when they're going on, so we can understand what variables might be influencing that particular number. Again, let's derive meaning from that number behind it. Again, that's a number. What are we going to do about it? I don't know. No, let's figure out what's happening so we can derive proactive initiatives to actually do something about it. I don't want to just look at it, well, it was up last year, so let's prepare for it this year. Okay? It's much more than that. We can forecast. There is the idea of predictive policing. We can get into ideas of saying, well, this variable is correlated with this variable. And correlation generally means that a variable is tends to exist and vary with the change in another one, right? So as this variable goes up, this one tends to go up as well. We're not saying that this variable causes this variable, right? We're saying it tends to relate with one another, right? And we want to know, what's that arrow between it. We want to derive why. Right? Because when we derive why, we can operationalize that particular idea. Because I can do as much research as I want. If I can't operationalize it and put it down to something that officers can use, both in a tactical and a strategic way, then it's just information on a page, right? Correlations, offer suppositions, direct an investigation or inquiry, okay? Where we might, as far as mining the data that we already collect, being able to query the information, being able to connect people to places to things, okay? Now that seems relatively simple in the days of Google, right? Because all you do is go to the internet, you go to Google or Yahoo, and you type in almost anything, and it's going to bring back a result of something that you want. You guys remember when the internet first started coming out, you had to actually type in your actual web address, and you get an error, and it's not found, or whatever else it is? You don't even need to do that anymore. You could actually just, I could take Yakima and just kind of spell it with 7 Ks, and it'll still bring up Yakima. Right? Google's made it very easy for us to find information. Right? Now, not everything is Google, and we need to learn how to mine that information, use that information in a timely manner. Okay, and again, that's the other, besides reporting and looking at what's going on, that's the other half of what I do. Okay, and now we can clear more cases. We can follow up on leads that wouldn't have existed before. We can look in place. I mean, have you ever seen that YouTube video where there's a bunch of dancers dancing around on a stage, and they're all like in these black costumes, and then a minute goes by and you're like, what am I watching? I have no idea what I'm watching. And all of a sudden it stops, and then, on the screen it says, did you see the gorilla? No, I didn't see the gorilla. And they say, watch again, right? And you watch the same video over again, and you see this gorilla dancing in between all the dancers, just kind of, prancing about. And that leads you to the question, why didn't you see it? You weren't looking for it, right? When we know what to look for, because you're like, well, wait a minute, they doctored the video. I'm going to go watch the first one that I watched when I didn't see it to see if that gorilla's actually there. Guess what? The gorilla's there. Why do I see it now? Well, because I'm looking for it. Well, we'll find more evidence. We'll find more information to follow up. We'll find those leads and be able to follow up on it if we're looking for them in the right places.
So I'm gonna add a little, your question, you know, we've got 2 gang units right now that we did not have, you know, 10, 20 years ago, and they utilize a lot of what Joe's talking about now, a lot of proactive, you know, intelligence gathering. They do a lot of work proactively rather than reactively.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Kind of along that same line, in '88 versus 2014, how many officers per thousand did we have?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I know that it was significantly less, but again, I'm not sure now. We got 140. I can do the math real quick for you, but I'd be happy to follow up on that as well. I don't want to misquote a number,
Not a problem.
but anyway, yeah. So taking these ideas and implementing them within the police department. But again, how do we solve social science problems? It's not primarily just a police issue. Right? There are many agencies, both on the public sector and the private sector, that can influence what we have going on in our city. You know, I was talking with Habitat for Humanity, other, you know, interactions with the community, leveraging social services and all those types of things. Again, police through directed enforcement methods can't solve crime on their own. It takes those partnerships as well. It takes leveraging others' resources. It takes partnerships with federal and state resources as well. And in doing so, we can better, so we're not just sitting there and throwing more officers at it, but what we are is actually attacking it from multiple sides, multi-pronged approach towards, you know, hitting these deviant areas, these problems. Now, I mean, there's like I said, a million different variables. Again, that's probably an overquote, but there's a variety of different variables that could influence what's really going on, or why we have a problem in certain areas of the city. Okay, in our continued vigilance to decide, you know, to determine what those problems are, and then think of new and creative and you know, different ways of tackling those issues through partnerships, through proactive efforts, through knowledge and intelligence. That's what will make the difference from here moving forward. Okay, you know, as far as the decline in general, I mean, if you ever studied crime statistics in general. Look at the nation. What you'll see is a general cyclical trend. That sometimes it'll go up, that we don't know why it goes up. Sometimes it'll go down. Sometimes we don't know why it goes down. It trends. Sometimes it trends in a seasonal manner, whether it's winter and or summer. More people are out. It's really, really hot. More people are annoyed. I don't know. You know, there's a variety of things. We see it. I'm actually from Arizona before this, so not from Arizona. I lived there for like 6 years, so. But it gets really, really hot. I mean, I can imagine how someone would just lose it, you know, because they're so hot.
Right.
Yeah, but you know, so it might there is a seasonal variance. There are, you know, upward trends and downward trends in the economy where people end up being more desperate than they were. They lost their house, they lost their car, they lost this, that, and the other thing. You know, they let the stresses of daily life get to them and they turn to drugs, whatever it might be. I mean, to sit here and try to explain it in one way is...
You follow the moon?
Yeah. Some people, you know, Mercury's in retrograde or something, right?
Yeah.
You know, to exercise, you know, an explanation in one way or another is an exercise of futility. I mean, there's so many different things that go on, right? And we need to do what we can as a police department, and then, you know, to leverage what we can when we can moving forward. So there's that. I mean, that's a general thing, but again, I don't want to inundate you with more information. I'd rather open it up to questions and we can kind of go from there. My contact information, copy it down. I have a few business cards with me. Be happy to, you know, to give you a couple and then follow up. Go ahead.